Welcome into a very special episode of Altitude Advantage. I'm your host, Aric DiLalla. So pleased to welcome back Susanna Weir, who's joined us as a digital content contributor. Maybe you saw that on Twitter, on LinkedIn, but Suze spent the 2024 season with us as an intern, and she is back for good. And Suze, no better time to welcome you back, to have you start, than to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, one of my favorite days of the entire year, the schedule. Suze, welcome back to Broncos country.
Perfect timing to come back. Can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, excited to get to it here. Fans know the home opener, the regular season opener, Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. That was released the other day, but we now have the complete 2026 Broncos schedule. I'm holding it. You've got it in front of you. We're going to go through game by game. But Suze, before we do that, I think just starting with some big takeaways, what always stands out to me is the primetime games, the standalone games. The Broncos this year have 5 of those, potentially could be 6 or 7. That wasn't intentional there. That just kind of happened. But the Broncos will play Monday Night Football, as we know, against the Chiefs in Week 1. They will host the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday Night Football in Week 3. They will play the Seattle Seahawks, the defending champion Seattle Seahawks, in Week 6 on Thursday Night Football. And then a couple of standalone games on, I think you could call them holidays, certainly one of them, but a Black Friday game in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. That'll be on Prime Video. And then Christmas Day, that divisional round rematch against the Buffalo Bills. We'll get to kind of our favorite stretches, our favorite games. I think we both agree that is the one that I can't wait for, that Christmas Day game. That'll be on Netflix at Empower Field at Mile High. I mentioned a couple of other possibilities. That rematch against the Patriots from the AFC Championship game, that is scheduled for Week 17. It'll be either Saturday or Sunday, January 2nd or 3rd. And then, as always, the final game of the regular season against the Chargers, that will be, again, either Saturday or Sunday. We'll find that out the week before the game. So there's a lot of information there that I just gave everybody. But when you look at those primetime games, it feels to me kind of like what the Broncos earned a year ago, but exciting to see it come to fruition. Which games kind of stand out there for you from the primetime slate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, like you said, the Christmas game, I mean, that's I think the matchup that even before the schedule came out, a lot of people had circled, just thinking back to the playoff game last year and what that was like. But what stands out to me is you have 3 primetime games in the first 6 weeks of the season. And then, you have the standalone holiday games later on. But to start off the season like that, I think is extremely exciting. Obviously, you have the Week 1 game in prime time. But to have 3 in the first 6 weeks, I mean, like you said, that's what they've earned. And then, obviously, excitement with holiday games is always there. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think we hear Sean Payton say all the time, we'll play in bigger games. And then he says you kind of earn those games, right? The primetime games, those unique windows. And we know how much players like that in terms of being able to play in front of their peers, being the only game on. That matters to guys. And the Broncos, by virtue of going 14-3 a year ago, being the number 1 seed, playing the way they did, and then adding a guy like Jalen Waddle in the offseason, obviously kind of the big offseason move there, maybe one of the biggest moves of any team in the offseason. You're going to be in primetime. I agree with you. It definitely stood out that 3 of those, and really the only true primetime night games, are all in the first 6 weeks of the season. It's nice, I think, that 2 of those are at home. I always do the schedule prediction. I did predict a Thursday night game against Seattle. It wasn't in Week 6, but I'm going to take that as kind of a half point there. We'll get to it as we go game by game, but I do kind of like that Thursday night game against the Seahawks for the Broncos. But yeah, nice to have those at home in Power Field at Mile High. It's electric whenever we play a home primetime game. And then Christmas Day, the second year in a row, the Broncos have done that. The Pittsburgh one, I think that's interesting just because it's new. The Broncos have never played on Black Friday. And again, we're going to go game by game through this schedule. One other thing before we do that, Suze, just kind of big picture from looking at the way the schedule unfolds, a couple of notes. No 3 in a row on the road at any point. You pointed out earlier that as we were talking before we started recording, just one stretch where the Broncos have back-to-back home games, a Week 10 bye for the Broncos. But I think what stood out to both of us was two stretches. One is weeks 1 through 6, where you play 5 playoff teams and the Kansas City Chiefs, who obviously will have we believe, a healthy Patrick Mahomes, and they're always a challenge. And then you end the year home Buffalo, at New England, home Chargers, 3 playoff teams from a year ago. Obviously, every game matters, but I think when you look at the schedule, those 2 stretches stand out to us as important ones. When you saw those, kind of what came to mind, how important are those 2 stretches going to be?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you start off the season playing 5, I mean, it's 5 of 6 teams in the first 6 weeks. We're in the postseason, but then you throw in Kansas City, who is always a division rival. You always expect to come out swinging, even if they did not make it to the postseason last year. That's still, not an easy game by any means. So, I think it'll be a test early, and then, to kind of end the season with. You never know how things are going to play out by the end of the year, but at this point, looking at it from here, you think that those will be important games. You think that those will be games with playoff implications. I mean, that's what you want. You want to start the season off with games that matter, and you want to end the season with games that matter. So I kind of like the way that it shook out. I think, it'll be very easy to tell early on what the team is because you're facing tough opponents early. So, I kind of like the way it shook out.
And I think back to one thing Sean Payton said at the beginning of the 2025 season, which is like, we've got to get off to a faster start if we want to achieve what we want to achieve. We can't have this. Obviously, the Broncos really struggled to start 2023, started 0-2 in 2024 before they turned things around. That was the season you spent with us here, Suze. Last year, you still had that 1-2 start, but then obviously go on that run of, 11, 12 consecutive wins. This is going to be another one of those where, like, you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a team that is probably going to be in the division mix right at the end. Like, that could be an important game from a tiebreaker standpoint down the road. Jacksonville, week 2, that's a game that could be an important reigning AFC South champion. That's a game that could be important down the line in December when you're battling for playoff seeding. So even though these come early, they're going to be important down the road. I do think maybe it helps that of those 6 games against playoff teams, 3 of them are against NFC West opponents in the Rams, Niners, and Seahawks. So every game is obviously important, but in terms of the AFC positioning, maybe it's helpful that you still have some games at the end of the year against the Bills, against the Patriots, against the Chargers. And one thing I'll say is, and you made a good point about, we have this schedule now and what we think these teams are going to look like, but every year there's teams that overperform and there's teams that underperform. You never know exactly what each matchup is going to present. It's all about when you play them from an injury standpoint as well. But what I will say is that we've seen year after year after year, the 1-5 start in 2023, the 0-2 start in 2024, the 1-2 start a year ago, Sean Payton's teams get better. And he always talks about the race to improve. And I don't know if anybody in the league does that better than the Broncos in terms of getting better as the season goes on. So I've kind of learned that, like, yeah, it's important to beat the Chiefs. It's important to beat the Jaguars. A huge measuring stick against the Rams, who maybe pound for pound are the most talented team in the NFC. But I also know that the version of the Broncos we'll see in week 17, 18, or even midseason is an improved version of the one that you see early in the season. So it's worth keeping all that in mind. With that, Suze, let's go through game by game here. We'll just spend a few seconds, a minute or so on each game, but if anything stands out to you, feel free to chime in. We'll start with the Kansas City Chiefs at GEHA Field at Arrowhead. Suze, the big one there, I feel like, is the status of Patrick Mahomes as he comes back off this torn ACL. Reports are that he's going to participate in the offseason program to some extent, but all summer it's going to be, is Patrick Mahomes playing? And that's going to greatly impact this game. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, obviously that will be continuously monitored throughout the summer and leading up to that game. I think it's interesting. I feel like after this game was released ahead of time, there was a lot of talk about, is it better to go to Arrowhead in September or is it better? And then schedule comes out, turns out both Chiefs games will be done by week 8 anyway. So I don't know. It's hard to say whether either way, you got to play the team twice. So you got to play them once there, you got to play them once here. So I know there was a lot of debate about whether or not that game would be preferred to open at home or go on the road there. But obviously, since it is week one, we don't really know what the status of Patrick Mahomes will be. And so obviously that's going to be the major storyline heading into that one.
Yeah, I also think something to keep an eye on there is just you've got the young defensive backs there for Kansas City. Obviously draft one in the top 10. It's going to be a new look secondary, new look defense in general. How does Spagnuolo have them ready to go versus that's Davis Webb's first game calling plays in a regular season game? What is that battle going to look like? That's going to be really exciting. Obviously, that's an incredibly difficult place to play. It'll be loud. Bo Nix expected to make his return after that season-ending ankle injury. You know, does he pick up where he left off last year? He was so good after the bye week, and especially in that playoff win over the Bills. Cannot wait to see him back on the field. And I'm always torn in week one because you can't always believe what happens in week one. Like last year, the Raiders beat the Patriots in week one, right? And then the Raiders only won one or two other games the rest of the year. But that was also the game that that gave the Broncos home field advantage throughout the playoffs because New England lost to the Raiders there. And obviously with Bo, who knows how that all unfolds there. Certainly valuable to play that game in Denver. But that's where, it can be week one. And yet it can matter so much at the end of the season. I do think your point about, hey, is it better to play at Kansas City first or to have that game at Denver? I just wonder, like, with the Mahomes coming off that injury regardless, is there a little bit of a rust factor there? Is he going to have to work his way back in? I do feel like maybe that is a little bit of an edge for Denver, that you get him like that. You get to play him on the road when he's coming back with that pass rush. But at the same time, you still got to go out there and do it, right? And so who knows if it matters, but that'll be obviously one we talk about all summer. I love that opener. To start off with a rival is great. You then come back home for the home opener against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2:05 Mountain on CBS on Sunday, September 20th. That was a tough loss a year ago. The Broncos were in it. They, I think, took the lead there in the second half on that R.J. Harvey touchdown. And then the defense, which was so great all year, did struggle a little bit stopping Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, Etienne, who's now moved on, had a big game. But that'll be one I would think the Broncos would want to, I don't know if get revenge year to year is a thing, but like that's another team that probably feels like they're a step away from a Super Bowl and feel like they should be a contender this year. That's a sneaky good game early in the season.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for that one because I feel like I missed out last year. So now we get a redo very early on. So no, I like, and we'll get to the Rams game shortly, but I like that this is the back-to-back home games here with these opponents. And it's the only time that it happens during the season. But, I agree. A surging team that's coming off of their best season in a long time last year, obviously going to be looking to continue that momentum, but they got to come here again. Obviously, last year's outcome was one thing, but that doesn't mean that they'll come in here again and do the same thing. So, but I do like that this, with the Rams game coming after that, I do like that that's the back-to-back home stretch. I think that gives a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, I think with this Jacksonville game, obviously Travis Hunter is a guy who did not play a year ago because of injury. Everyone, or at least the CU fans listening to our podcast, I'm sure they're excited to see Travis Hunter. How does Jacksonville use him? Trevor Lawrence is again the big story here, and it's a quarterback-driven league, but he looked more comfortable than he did for most of his career last year. And with Liam Cohen, his first year there, they took a big step. That's a good football team. That's going to be a big test, and it will, I think, kind of it'll have a playoff atmosphere early in the year. I'm sure Broncos country will be fired up for the home opener, and either you're coming in off a big win over the Chiefs and you want to keep that momentum going, or if you stumble in Kansas City, you really feel like you need that one. And so either way, the intensity is going to be high for week 2. Then we go to week 3, the Los Angeles Rams, a primetime game on Sunday Night Football. This Rams team, Suze, is as good as any team in the NFL. You've got Matt Stafford at quarterback, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and then that defense. You talk about the Broncos bringing pressure. The Rams do it just as well. And this is a team that obviously was the other conference finalist. So you've got the Broncos. the AFC finalists that didn't make it, the Rams, the NFC finalists who didn't make it. This could easily be a Super Bowl preview if both these teams achieve their potential. And I don't know. I mean, I scanned through the schedule. It's tough to find, like, there's a lot of tests on this schedule, but I don't know if you'll find one more difficult. This is a big time game, and for it to be in prime time, like that's what you want. That's what you've earned.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Rams right now are a team that, yes, they made a deep playoff push last year, but it feels like they fell short of their expectations last year because that's how high level this team is. And so, as we mentioned at the top of this is going to be a big test early. And like you said, if you do drop one of these early games, are you able to bounce back against a just as good, if not better, opponent early on? So that was definitely, even before the schedule came out, obviously you have a few games that you're looking forward to. That was certainly one of mine, just knowing the caliber of that team and where they're at right now.
And sometimes I think when you get the schedule, you see a lot of primetime games that it's all division matchups, or maybe it's all AFC matchups or NFC, like they're within conference. I like that the NFL gave us a couple primetime games outside the conference. You've got the Rams game, you've got the Seahawks game, which we'll get to in a minute. Like I kind of like that when teams match up across conferences in prime time. And just the schedule in general, this is not new because we've known the opponents for months. But I think it does help that some of the most dangerous teams you'll play, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Bills, we'll get to them later, they are at home. And we know how good the Broncos were at home last year, and really dating back to 2024, they hadn't that loss against Jacksonville in the regular season. That was the first time they'd lost at home since way back against the Chargers early in the 2024 season. So the home field advantage is well established. Sean Payton talked toward the end of last year about how loud it had gotten, how it had become a true home field advantage. We need Broncos country to continue that for sure. Then week 4, head on the road for the first time since week 1 at the San Francisco 49ers, another playoff team, another good team that last year had so many injuries and still found a way to make the postseason and went, I believe, hosted a game against Seattle in week 18 to have home field advantage for the entire playoff run. So they were right there as well. We know a Kyle Shanahan team is always going to pose a challenge offensively. Defensively, they've got some playmakers as well. It is a little bit of a reunion game for some of the guys here in Denver. Mike McGlinchey, Talanoa Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw, who was in Denver, goes back to San Francisco. So lots of storylines there. These organizations are close. They had that joint practice a year ago. John Lynch, obviously, Broncos Ring of Famer. But that'll be another good test. I keep saying it, but like these first 6 weeks, really, and maybe it continues, right? Like it's not like there's not other teams that could do the same. But like if you told me any of these games was going to be like either the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl in 5 months or whatever it is from September, I'd be like, sure, yeah, I buy that.
Yeah, no, I think you mentioned that some of these games that are going to be big tests are fortunately at home. This San Francisco game to me is one that stands out on the schedule as this is a tough road game. Just knowing, like you said, what they're able to do offensively. They added Mike Evans this offseason as well. So already seeing what they were able to do, depleted by injuries last year. Obviously, Mike Evans is also coming off of injury, but I think it's expected that he'll be healthy again. So that to me feels like one of the harder away games on this schedule, especially in the early stretch here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good team, a sound team, a physical team. So excited to see that one. The Broncos then stay on the road, stay in California. I mean, not literally, right? But their next game is also in California against the Los Angeles Chargers, a team that was right there in the division race all year last year. They upgrade in the offseason, bring in some talented pieces, and I think more so than anyone on the field, the addition of offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel, the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Like, I'm interested to see how that all looks with Justin Herbert under center. Like, the Broncos they only faced him once last year, right? And it was that back and forth game where Chargers go up in LA, Denver comes back, takes the lead. Herbert leads that late game drive to put things away. This is, again, you talk about the Kansas City game. you're going to be right there with the Chargers all year long. The game at the end of the year was the first time the Broncos had beaten the Chargers under Sean Payton, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly. I'm now questioning that, and I'll look it up as I toss it to you. And the one at the end of the year was not against the starters. So this is Bo Nix, I think, still knows. He mentioned it at one point, like, haven't beaten the Chargers. He's now done that, but, like, can he beat Herbert? I think there is a little bit of an element of, can the Broncos beat these guys, and kind of it's another chance to secure an early hold on the AFC West. Yeah,
absolutely. I feel like, at least in the time that I've been closely following this team, which starting when I was, here in 2024, it feels like the Chargers have just been kind of like a thorn in this team's side. Like, they, for some reason, have just struggled to put together complete games. I think back to that 2024 game where it seemed, I think it was maybe a Thursday night game where it seemed like they had put that game away against them at SoFi. Chargers come battling back, take the win there. And then, like you mentioned, last year, you finally get the win, but it's not against the starters. So I think, this week 5 matchup, that's when you make a statement. Yes, we beat you with the backups last year, but now this is the starters. We're here. Finally get over that hump and kind of get them out of the way.
Yeah, and I think just the nature of that team and how talented they are, they're going to be around, right? But I think that this is a team that, like, it would go a long way to get that win. And just to correct myself, the Broncos actually swept the Chargers in 2023, the first year under Sean Payton. It's since Jim Harbaugh arrived in 2024. The Broncos are now 1-3 against Harbaugh, with the win coming last year. But the Chargers are also interesting. They took a lot of heat after that playoff loss in New England. It's been kind of a transformational offseason for them in some ways. And so I'm just interested to see, how does that all look? Like, I think a lot of people nationally are in on the Chargers, and they're going to be a tough test. But I also, like, we've talked about these games so far. Like, I can't wait to see what the Broncos look like, because you add Jalen Waddle to that offense. A defense gets another year, bringing back a lot of the same key pieces. You add in some rookies that can maybe contribute, and it's like, okay, well, these are two of the best teams in the AFC that, again, like I said, any of these could be AFC Championship or Super Bowl matchups with the respective conferences, and I'd buy it. Thursday, Seattle, we talked about this a little bit, so won't spend a ton of time here. This is week 6. The Broncos will host Thursday Night Football. I mentioned I kind of like this just in terms of, I think you're facing the defending champions. Having the ability to host Thursday Night Football on a short week, I think is an inherent advantage for the home team, just because the other team has to travel a day earlier, and it shortens the recovery time. I think if you look at, like, the winning percentages of home teams on Thursday Night Football, it's higher than it is kind of in a quote-unquote normal Sunday game. I would still think this would be a physical game against a Seattle Seahawks team that, like, we saw what they did in the Super Bowl to New England, right? But it's also kind of a chance for Broncos country to see, and I know Seattle's lost some pieces, but hey, what could that Super Bowl have looked like? It's a small consolation, obviously, to actually playing in the game with a healthy Bo Nix, or if Stidham had led this team to the Super Bowl. But nonetheless, it'll be fun to see how the Broncos stack up. I had one more thought there, but Susan, anything that stand out to you about this game?
Yeah, I mean, initially when you said, I like that this is Thursday, I paused for a second, but then, I think you're right. I think I've heard a lot of players say Thursday games really come down to who is willing to grit it out and who wants it the most and who's going to put in the most effort. And so I think, going up against the defending champs, you probably have a little bit of, I want to prove something. And so maybe that adds to how much you're willing to grit it out and fight through the fatigue, because everybody's going to have it on a Thursday night. And obviously, like you said, huge that game is at home, and I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to mention is Sean Payton always points to, hey, who has a halftime lead in these games, because it translates to wins more often than a normal Sunday game. So that'll be something to pay attention to. Obviously, the Broncos had a pair of Thursday night football games this past year, had the Christmas Day game against the Chiefs, had the one at home against the Raiders, neither particularly pretty. I think everyone would agree on that, but the Broncos won both of them. And then you go back to 2024, like you mentioned, there was the one in LA where the Broncos actually had a big lead and then weren't able to put it away. Did have a big win over the Saints on Thursday Night Football. And then you go back to 2023, the Thursday night football game in Kansas City. That was a tough game, and Sean Payton has talked about that. But I think, so if I'm remembering correctly, my brain is working properly, I think just one Thursday night football game at home in the Sean Payton era, this will be the second. And can the Broncos kind of use that to their advantage? They're a good team. You're going to have to find a way to beat them either way. Week 7 at Arizona, this is, you talk about road stretches. I mentioned no 3-game road trips, but this is the third road game in 4 weeks, going to face the Cardinals, a team that picked early in the draft. I believe they selected Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. I think it starts with stopping him. And you never know with these teams. I don't think it's quite clear who's going to play quarterback yet for the Cardinals. So a lot of unknown there. But I think one of the things that impressed me about the Broncos a year ago was that they and you never know at this time of year, right? But they did take care of teams that, quote unquote, you should take care of. But the other thing was, and Susanna, you were in New York. You worked for the Jets a year ago. That was maybe a closer game in London than people expected between the Broncos and Jets. And Sean Payton said at the Combine this year that there are no illusions that, like, we're going to win that many one-score games again. So one of the things I'll be watching this year is against the teams that, quote unquote, you maybe should win against, can the Broncos maybe be a little more convincing, put a little more distance between them? It's a league that's built for parity, a league that's built for one-score games. But at the same time, like, can you put some games away? And not picking on Arizona specifically here, but, like, can you just put some games away, like maybe against even if it's the Chargers or Seahawks, like if you have a chance to put a team away and go up multiple scores, can you do that so that you don't have to win? I mean, the Broncos were 12, and I think including the Bills game, maybe like 13-3 in one-score games, if I'm remembering properly. Might not happen again. It tends to regress a little bit and come back toward the mean. So in games where you have an opportunity to go up and put games away, can they do that? Just kind of a big picture thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that I think of with this Arizona game that it just brings up for me, as you mentioned, Jeremiah Love, you have on this schedule, and obviously we knew the opponents before now, but this just made me think of it. You're facing the 3 teams that played in the conference championships, and then obviously the Broncos were the 4th team. But then not only that, but you face the number 1, 2, and 3 overall picks in the draft, with Jeremiah Love being number 3, and then obviously we'll get to the other 2 further down the schedule. But
yeah, I mean, the NFL is a definition of anybody can win a game at any time, and you can't ever look at games and pencil in wins. And again, I think just to reiterate, one of the things that's impressed me about this team under Sean Payton that was not always the case, and I think back to like 2021, the Broncos beat a good Dallas team on the road, and they were like, it was like, okay, let's turn things around. They come back and they lost in Denver to, I think, a 2-6 Philadelphia Eagles team. And it's like, when you lose those sorts of games, it can be difficult to maintain momentum. Sean Payton talks about any good team in this league worth its salt strings wins together. So that'll be important to kind of like take care of games that you need to take care of. Week 8, Kansas City comes to Denver. We talked about the Chiefs a lot, so don't need to spend a lot of time on this one. We were talking before. I was like, wow, they play both of them by week 8. Like, that must have never happened. And then I looked and it happened in 2023. So I don't know. It just seems early. It'll be weird not to see the Chiefs the rest of the way, unless, of course, the Broncos face them in the postseason. Suze, week 9, the Broncos go to Carolina. It's an East Coast trip. This one, I'll be honest, I don't love a 1 p.m. East Coast start. That always kind of scares me a little bit for teams coming from west to east. And this Panthers team, they took the Rams to the wire a year ago in the playoffs. Bryce Young, they took a big step forward. They loaded up on defense. I believe Devin Lloyd from Jacksonville went there. I think this is like a sneaky, tough, and maybe not even sneaky because they won the division, but this is going to be a tough game, and one that certainly, if you're a Broncos fan, don't overlook this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I do like that the bye does come after an East Coast road trip. I think that kind of just will serve to the benefit of the rest of the schedule, but I agree, by no means is this a team that you can overlook. I know they gritted out that division, and it was that whole weird scenario where there were several tiebreakers that ended up being the reason that they won that division, but they won the division nonetheless. So certainly not a team to overlook. And then they had the offensive rookie of the year with Tet McMillan as well. So, certainly a a good team, and I do like that East Coast. I mean, 1 p.m. I got used to the 1 p.m. East Coast kickoffs last year. Most of the games I was at were 1 p.m. East Coast kickoffs, but tough for a team, coming from Mountain Time or the West Coast for sure.
And that'll be one to watch. Like, do the Broncos go out a day early? How do they handle that? Those are the sorts of things. One thing that stands out is there are no back-to-back East Coast games. Obviously, the Broncos spent time at the Greenbrier 2 years ago. Last year, they went from Philly straight to London. I don't necessarily see that sort of situation on the schedule looking at it kind of at first glance. But until we hear from Sean Payton, you never know. Like, those 2 games in California, like, I don't know. It's hard to tell until we hear from Coach Payton, but I know he likes those bonding trips. And San Francisco, LA, they're so close to Denver. Maybe it doesn't make sense. I'm just tossing ideas out there. So it's nice that time of year in California. Okay, the bye week 10. Last year was week 12, the year before week 14. So a little more normal, kind of halfway through just about. And something worth noting is after you get through that stretch of 5 playoff teams in 6 weeks, and the Chiefs, you do have those 10 days before Arizona, Kansas City, Carolina. So kind of a mini break there. But you get the bye week. Go into week 11, you host the Raiders for the first time. Both the Chiefs games are before week 8. Both the Raiders games are week 11 and later. With the Raiders, I think the question is Mendoza playing yet or not? They bring in Kirk Cousins, and it seems like from some of the reporting that maybe they want him to start all year, but at some point does Mendoza get to play? It'll be interesting to see. They also brought in a lot of free agent acquisitions. Max Crosby is still there. We'll see how that all pans out after that trade that wasn't to Baltimore. Clint Kubiak, obviously father. Gary Kubiak won a Super Bowl here. Spent so many years here, both as a player, coach, one of my all-time favorite people. And Clint spent time working here as a coach as well. I think the Raiders are, and last year obviously they struggled, but typically they've been, again, another kind of thorn. Like, these division teams play you tough. I would expect the Raiders to play the Broncos tough again. And with Clint Kubiak, and whether it's Cousins or Mendoza, I would expect this to be a more difficult challenge than it was maybe a year ago.
Absolutely. I think, like you mentioned, struggled the last couple years, but a team that's certainly building and trying to add those pieces. And anytime you play a division opponent, it's tough. Doesn't matter if they're struggling in a rebuilding phase, whatever it may be. I mean, it's still, those division matchups, you just never know. So I think also, coming out of the bye, you want to make sure that you're sharp for that game as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. A year ago, the Broncos played on Sunday Night Football after the bye week. Probably not as sharp as some guys said, like, hey, yeah, we could have been better tackling wise. So that's always something to pay attention to. Maybe it does help that it's at home. Week 12, Black Friday, for the first time in franchise history, at Pittsburgh. And I think at least the last few trips to Pittsburgh, the Broncos have not won there. They haven't played there in a few years, obviously. I think the question is who is the quarterback for the Steelers, right? Like, does it end up being Aaron Rodgers still? As we're like, he could sign at any minute. So as we're recording this, he's not the quarterback, but who ends up being the quarterback there? I think that's the big question. Anything you want to add on Pittsburgh?
Do you like a 3 p.m. East Coast start time?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I think
the 1 p.m.?
I think a little bit better. Gives you a little bit longer to adjust. That's going to feel like a 1 p.m. Mountain Time kick. So yeah, yes, I do. I do like that better than a 1 p.m.
Good.
I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, that is a note for Broncos country. You can your brunch can extend a little bit longer. It's the day after Thanksgiving. Maybe you're moving a little slow. You're very full. This will give you time to maybe go on a nice walk.
Yeah,
could be nice. This is the first, and then we'll talk about this. First, maybe potential bad weather game, like Pittsburgh in late November. It starts to get like, one of the things you look at is where could it be snowing, where could it be kind of gross rain, like just cold and wet, windy, like where could that impact a game? I think at Pittsburgh late November probably is the first one.
Yeah.
Then again, it was 60 degrees in Kansas City on Christmas last year, give or take.
And it snowed for you guys here. So
that it did snow, Suze. Thanks for the reminder. Okay, week 13, host the Miami Dolphins. This is kind of the Jalen Waddle return, or I guess not return, but he'll face his former team, a new coaching staff there. A lot of the former, Bradley Chubb, former Bronco, he's gone. This is a team that is obviously kind of setting itself up for the future. It'll be interesting to see how things go this year. Malik Willis in there at quarterback. But this is a game that I think mainly it'll be the storyline that week will be Jalen Waddle, and hopefully he's having a good season for the Broncos. They gave up a first-round pick. George Payton, Sean Payton both talked about, hey, we didn't think we could get anybody with the first-round pick who would make that sort of impact. Devon Achane, really good player. And this is the first time the Broncos, I believe, will play the Dolphins since that game in 2023 that did not go so well. And so hopefully the Broncos end up in the win column this time.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Thank you. Thank you. I know what I'm doing here. Okay, week 14, the Susanna Weir Broncos Jets Bowl at.
That's what they called it over there too.
Whoa.
Susanna Bowl.
Wow. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Broncos and Jets have played every year since 2018 or 19. It's like 7 or 8 years in a row.
This will be the 8th year in a row.
I think it's 9 of the last 10. Like,
something.
It has just so happened that the Broncos and Jets have finished in the same place in their division in a lot of years. And in the rare year that it didn't, like last year, the Broncos played the AFC East. So the annual matchup against the Jets continues. This one at MetLife. Darren Muji, former Broncos assistant GM, has acquired draft capital there. I think everyone is pretty high on kind of the moves that they've made in the offseason. I will now turn it over to you because you know more about the New York Jets. But I think this could be, again, and not just because of the 1 p.m. Eastern, but I think this could be a sneaky, like with Geno Smith, if he gets back to playing like he did in Seattle, this is, I think, a good test and a team that's going to be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly I would expect them to be more competitive than last year, just looking at how many pieces they were able to add during the draft. I mean, Muji has done an incredible job over there just acquiring that draft capital and kind of building this team, bringing in young talent, but then they also just extended Breece Hall, and you've got Garrett Wilson there long term. I mean, they are focused on bringing in the right people, fixing the holes in the roster. Obviously I spent last season there and they struggled, but I think I would be surprised to not see them take a step forward this year, just knowing the pieces that they've brought in and the progress that's being made over there. This is, as you pointed out before we recorded this, the second potential bad weather that the Broncos could face. You never know what you're going to get at MetLife Stadium in December.
Yeah. And it should be pointed out because maybe Broncos fans are scared to learn that you spent last year with the Jets. Maybe it's some sort of omen. No, you were also here in 2024 when the Broncos snapped their playoff drought. Yes. Bo Nix led the team to the postseason in his first year as a starting quarterback.
I brought the luck.
Well, yeah, I was here, 8 years at that point, and had never seen the postseason. So exactly. You are much better luck than I am. Also, we didn't mention they part of that Sauce Gardner trade, and they traded Quinnen Williams. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Just making sure I'm dialed in. They had 3 first-round picks in this past draft, and this is where I'm going to show that I pay attention to the NFL draft. Even when the Broncos don't have a first-round pick, they took David Bailey, out of Texas Tech. They took Omar Cooper out of Indiana, and before they took Omar Cooper, they took Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. Okay, that's right. I'm pretty sure that's right. So 2 offensive playmakers, and obviously a talented edge guy. So Sadiq in particular, Cooper, like you said, when you add him to a Garrett Wilson, a Breece Hall, it's a good skill group. So credit to Darren Muji for what he's doing over there. Another one of the good ones in the league. The Broncos then a second consecutive road game. They go to Vegas. We talked about kind of the Raiders and their situation. Again, a team that I think is going to be more competitive this year. And then you have that final stretch. And this is, again, right up there with the first 6 weeks of the season in terms of important, defining, I think tremendous, exciting to see. These are going to be fun games. And it starts with Buffalo on Christmas Day. I think sometimes when you think about the schedule and when I like predict the schedule, sometimes I try not to be like too Broncos centric because I'm like, oh, like, yeah, it'd be great if the Broncos played the Bills on Sunday Night Football like in week 1, right? Like everyone wants to see a rematch of that. And then I'm like, well, there are 30 other teams and teams that think they should be on primetime too. But I think there's no doubt that, yeah, I don't think there's doubt that Bills-Broncos game was like the best game of the postseason.
I was going to say, as an outside observer in your defense, that was one of the most exciting games to be an audience member of.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're being too Broncos centric.
And to like when you are now you're back-to-back Christmas Day game participant, you're putting yourself in the kind of sphere of like the Kansas Cities, the Buffaloes, in the AFC, the Bengals, who like the Cowboys, who in the NFC, right? Like the Rams, who like always, it seems like are in these types of games. The Ravens a lot recently with Lamar Jackson, right? Like the Broncos are becoming, and especially last year, like must-see TV. And they played a ton of thrilling games. The way that Bo Nix played late in the year, like he's establishing himself as one of those guys you've got to see because he can make unreal plays. And whether it's, spinning to his left and launching it to Troy Franklin against the Colts or that throw to Marvin Mims late in the win over the Bills, like he can make those plays. And so I think if you're a Broncos fan, like this should be a sign that the Broncos are back as one of those teams that like, belong in these moments, and they're getting these moments. Now, from a on-field standpoint, the Bills still really good, still going to be a really tough matchup. Anytime Josh Allen is there, I know he had the turnovers last year, but like I'm sure he'll be motivated to come out and have a good game. They add Bradley Chubb from the Dolphins, and then I'm going to get it, DJ Moore from Chicago. Traded a second-round pick, I believe, for him. So this is a team that, again, they're kind of in the Broncos boat where like the goal is clear. Anything else is just quite frankly not what you're going for. And these are two really good football teams. It's going to be a great game. I hope, knock on wood, like everybody's healthy for that game and we get to see the version of that game that we quite frankly deserve to see. And this is another game. It could be a preview of the AFC Championship in 4 weeks from this game.
Yeah, I could not be more excited for this game. This is I don't know if I'm supposed to say that yet because maybe we're going to do our most excited for games.
We don't have to do it anymore.
Well, this is the game I'm most excited for. I mean, like you said, these are the games that you want to be in. I mean, I can already tell that all the players are going to be so excited. You have the national audience. And I mean, selfishly, I missed out on this matchup too last year, so now I get to see it. Yeah, I think the Bills have been right there for it feels like forever at this point. And as you mentioned, adding, I think, one of the things that people reflected on with that team last year was maybe they didn't have those consistent offensive playmakers for Josh Allen, and he was having to do maybe too much on his own, and that seemed to be kind of the talk over there. Certainly there are good players over there, and there were last year, but I think going out and adding some pieces will just make this matchup just that much more exciting. And what better day to do it than Christmas? That's
right. Nice little present.
Yeah.
And selfishly, nice to get to do it in Denver.
At home. Absolutely. Yeah, you were in Kansas City last year.
This is not controversial. I'll be much happier to spend Christmas in Denver than I was to spend it in Kansas City. Hopefully the end result is the same and that the Broncos get a win. Then week 17, again, this could be Saturday or Sunday. I suspect that they will. It looks like, I'm just trying to read this quickly, the flex scheduling information. I'm not finding it, but I assume that they'll pick some games to be played Saturday and the rest will become Sunday games. I think that's kind of what happened with the Bengals game a couple years ago. That was when you were here.
Yep. That was a Saturday.
Yeah, and listen, this game at New England, talk about potential bad weather, early January in New England, this could be a repeat of a snow game. I wonder if the NFL did that intentionally, if that's kind of like a fun for them. I don't know. But this is what we want, right? This is the chance to see how would this have gone. Right. And man, I can't wait for that one. It is interesting because it's so far at the end that you just wonder, like, are things like by 2 weeks to go in the season, you kind of know all these playoff scenarios and like which teams are in it, which teams are not. Like, I'll just be interested to see like what's at stake. I would think there would still be a lot, but like, does New England have the division wrapped up, or does Denver have the division wrapped up? Or like, is the seeding pretty clear that like, oh, even with a win, you're going to be in this spot? I don't know. That's the only thing that I would wonder about. But from a football standpoint, should still be a great game. Bo Nix versus Drake May. There was some reporting out there. I think maybe it was Jim Nantz who said it, that like Drake May and Bo Nix were hanging out at the Masters.
Yeah, they went to watch golf together.
I didn't get the invite. That's okay. But yeah, an exciting football game, and kind of like I said, a chance to see what could have been last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's like we mentioned, you have these defining stretches at the beginning and the end. You just don't know what the end is going to be like. Hopefully everybody's healthy and you're able to see that game in full force, because that feels like, I guess a revenge game of some sorts.
Yeah. I mean, I think like you just mentioned, we never would have guessed this time a year ago when you're talking about, Broncos at Chiefs on Christmas Day, that Patrick Mahomes isn't playing, right? Or that the Chiefs have been, I think they were eliminated from the playoffs at that point. Like, you just aren't expecting that sort of thing. And so, and really that could be, like we talked about this time last year, Monday Night Football game against the Bengals being, this could be like the most fun game of the year. It's a rematch of the 2024 game that went back and forth, and then Joe Burrow gets hurt and he's not in the game. And so we're projecting based on, like, I think the best possible scenario of everybody being available, but obviously, there's a saying, it's not about who you play, it's when you play them. And some of that will be true, certainly, for this schedule. The final game on the regular season schedule, hopefully there's several postseason games to come, is home against the Chargers. Suze, I think I pulled the stat. It's the first time since 2019-2020 the Broncos have played the same team back-to-back, like in back-to-back years to end the regular season. Also played the Chargers at home to end last year. Obviously didn't face the Chargers as starters. We'll see what happens this year, right? Like, are these two teams battling for the division? Does one of the teams have it locked up? Maybe it'll be another win and get the 1 seed for the Broncos? We'll have to see. But I don't know, just kind of big picture. What are your thoughts? I think, like, I don't see a stretch that's crazy unfair. It feels like a pretty fair schedule to me, and see some wins.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a tough stretch at the beginning there. Like, that's definitely the thing that stands out to me, big picture. And then, that end stretch looks tough, but like we mentioned, we don't know what the situation will be at that point. So, the thing that sticks out to me most of all is that a fast start is going to be important, especially given the caliber of the opponents that you're facing back to back early, all before the bye. Obviously, you have some strong opponents after the bye too, but given that you only have 2 back-to-back home games in this stretch, you're facing those playoff teams. I think a fast start is always important, but especially important with the way things shook out here with this schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is, again, those primetime games and those standalone games on Black Friday, on Christmas, Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, Monday Night Football, get a little bit of everything. It'll be important in that stretch, too, for the Broncos to be able to, teams like their routine, right? And can they get into that new routine, find a way to make things work? But it's kind of the platform and the exposure that this team deserves after a year ago. So nice to see them kind of get that recognition, get these opportunities, and that's all they are right now, opportunities. You still got to go out there and earn it. As Sean Payton says, you start each year anew, you start the race over, and the Broncos in 2026 will start that race over. Appreciate everyone joining us on this episode of Altitude Advantage. It's been a pleasure to chat with Susanna Weir, who's back for good to chat through things and cover the Broncos. Hope you stay tuned to a lot more schedule release content coming up on DenverBroncos.com and the Denver Broncos social channels. But for now, signing off, I'm Aric DiLalla.